Late at night in his mansion, Tenchai Kaido continued to ponder the results of his work, and it seemed that there would never be an end to the difficulties. The basic task the brilliant scientist was working on was the ability to program human emotions into an artificial intelligence. All of Kaido's research was long and arduous, with the fact that the brilliant scientist had a complete lack of useful connections adding to the difficulty. Kaido had been very successful in many different fields since his childhood. At his young age, he had already become a genius of science that had been developing for hundreds of years. Achievement in science was just one part of Kaido's genius, and it so happened that he himself became hostage to his reputation to some extent. There have been assassination attempts in the scientist's life, and Kaido has been on the brink of death several times, so it is not at all surprising that his personality has become a bit warped. Kaido realized that it was very difficult for him to get data on the reaction of a human because the people he knew were very busy or out of reach, and if one were to ask a stranger for help, one would have to remain indebted to him, and there was no telling what exactly that person would want in the future. Constant difficulties and frustrations made the brilliant scientist dream of going somewhere unknown where no one would know about him. There was a constant feeling of complete indifference and lack of attachment to his native world. Kaido looked sadly at the old photos where he was still really cheerful and realized that a scientist who lost all his driving force and thirst for knowledge becomes useless. Falling asleep in his desk chair, Kaido continued to think about the choice of his future path and tried to figure out exactly how to proceed. That very evening, the brilliant scientist Kaido disappeared from the home world that had given him life, fame, and raised him as a human being, waking up from a light breeze. Kaido was incredibly surprised to find himself in the middle of a vast field under an open blue sky. Completely unaware of what was happening, Kaido decided to call someone, but the phone screen treacherously reported no network. The genius scientist tried to think rationally and decided to find someone, and since he had nothing with him, he just went ahead. But soon Kaido stopped, for he met a real tiger on his way. A huge ferocious animal with a strange horn on its head grinning its fangs moved to meet him. Kaido slowly backed up and tried to talk to the tiger. The huge striped cat was in no mood for conversation and immediately pounced on the tempting prey. Kaido realized that there was only one salvation in this situation, and it was in the pocket of his robe. The scientist accurately guessed the moment of the tiger's throw and was able to dodge the animal's deadly claws. The situation was critical and Kaido could barely contain his emotions from the terrible roar of the tiger. But still, Kaido was able to find the right moment and released an electric discharge at the huge predator. The stunned monster wriggled convulsively and fell to the ground and became absolutely motionless. Kaido praised himself for his foresight, for his prototype stun gun had really come in handy. This stun gun had incredible power and could kill even an elephant, but the enormous power was also a disadvantage of this device, as it could only be used twice. Kaido realized that he was also helped by the tiger's slowness, and if the monster had been a little faster, the outcome of the battle would have been different. But the main thing was that now one could feel calm and should concentrate on finding people. But suddenly Kaido felt a jolt in his back and regretted that he had not paid much attention to strengthening his body. A strange silhouette of a man in the sunlight asked the scientist what he was doing in this place. Kaido tried to take a closer look at his interlocutor, but was immediately accused of inappropriate behavior and punished with a kick from the woman's leg. The irascible lady realized that they had overdone it and decided not to leave the stranger in such a dangerous place, especially unconscious. At the same time, the girl paid attention to the beautiful features of the genius scientist's face and to the fact that his snow-white robe was terribly stained with dirt. The girl with wings was a little sad that she had not met such a handsome guy in the city as a normal person. But now there was nothing else I could do but to carry the stranger in her arms. The genius scientist's awakening was not very pleasant, as it felt as if he had escaped from a terrible nightmare. Almost immediately, a girl appeared nearby and politely offered flavored tea. Kaido thanked for the hot drink and regarded the unusual girl with astonishment. The beautiful stranger asked what confused the scientist and Kaido pointed to the wings on his back. The girl introduced herself as Rumina Arclight and explained that those wings were her pride. After all, she is said to have some of the most beautiful black feathers among the winged race. Kaido introduced himself in return and greatly surprised the winged girl with his unusual name. The scientist inquired as to where he was even located. Rumina called this place her home, the Forest of Forestia, and told how he had struck Kaido and then brought him here to heal. The girl wondered why the scientist was wandering alone in a field among monsters in the first place. But Kaido himself did not know the answer to this question, so he honestly admitted that he did not remember how he got to that area. Kaido explained that he was just working in his lab as usual. Then he got very tired and fell asleep. And when he woke up, he was in that huge field. Rumina asked if he had ever studied teleportation magic before. Kaido explained that his research had nothing to do with teleportation. In fact, he had only fallen asleep and then found himself in an unfamiliar place. Kaido found all this very strange and asked if Rumina could even use magic. The girl admitted that she wasn't very good at it and could slightly use support magic with some daily needs and was a little skilled at using attack magic. Rumina noticed how it was getting dark outside and suggested that they light the lights. Rumina commanded the light to listen to her voice and become dim. To the scientist's surprise, the light in the lamp did indeed come on with absolutely no physical action. Rumina then stated that it was now the time of the monsters and Kaido had better stay in the house for the night. At the same time, the girl warned that if the scientist did anything untoward, she would personally throw him into the crowd of monsters. Kaido watched the magic light with interest and asked if he could examine the lamp. The girl didn't understand the surprise and allowed. To the scientist's surprise, there were no cords in the lamp, much less the bulb he was used to. Rumia asked why Kaido was so alarmed and abruptly fell silent. Kaido decided to test his theory and asked the girl if she knew the real purpose for the calculator. But judging from Rumina's reaction, this was the first time she had seen this elementary object. The scientist explained that the calculator is used as a tool to help with complex calculations and suggested that the girl come up with a math problem. Rumia quickly came up with different numbers and problems and was delighted with the process of calculating. Rumia quickly checked the calculator result by hand and was surprised by the complete match. The girl admitted that she had never before heard of a tool that could perform such complex calculations so easily. Kaido didn't understand why this simple calculator was so surprising to someone who uses magic. Gradually, the scientist began to guess that he had entered some fantasy world and asked Rumia to start by telling him more about magical processes. The girl reiterated that she wasn't very good at magic, but Kaido explained that he came from a place where magic didn't exist at all, and so any information was important to him. Rumia had never heard of a territory where magic was not used. The genius scientist explained that in his world they create so-called magic tools and use them to make their lives easier. There are many such items as a calculator, but they have nothing to do with magic. The girl with wings couldn't believe such a thing right away and decided that maybe Kaido was telling the truth. Rumia then asked if Kaido knew what magic power was, since it was the basis of all magic. Kaido replied that, as far as he understood it, it was the power by which magic processes are produced. The girl talked about the basic attributes of machines, which are fire, water, wind, earth, light, and darkness. Rumia stated that magical power is in all beings with a certain level of intelligence. However, this power also has individuality depending on the person. So each magical attribute has its own strengths and weaknesses. And the attributes themselves are essentially magic that can be used by each person. There is also magic without attributes consisting in a magic weapon or defense system. There are also special attributes such as creation, healing, space. Rumia explained that she has heard of people who can use special attributes and they cannot use other magic, and such people are born about once every 100 years. In order to use magic, you have to visualize the formula in your head and infuse your magical power into it. And the more perfect the technique becomes, the more complex its formula becomes. Therefore, one must be able to accurately memorize and fully concentrate on using advanced magic. Rumia explained that the best magical processes are impossible for people with ordinary memory. There is also another important factor called activation time for each type of magic. For example, the magic of a small little light that illuminates a room has almost no activation time. And the highest level of magic takes at least half a day from completion to activation along with magic and concentration. So it's very important that the wizard has a lot of mental strength and that no one interferes with him during the process itself. Also, there's also more physical enhancement with magic. As it turned out, with the help of such a possibility, One can significantly strengthen one's body, strengthen one's arms, or make one's legs faster. For example, Rumiya suggested that she could teach Kaido how to do this. But in this case, it would be necessary to first awaken the scientist's magic power. Kaido didn't really understand exactly how that would happen. Rumiya explained that many people who had been in a coma for years, for example, could not use their magic properly after they awakened. But if Kaido is able to stimulate magic from the outside, he will eventually be able to use his magic properly. But unfortunately, such a recovery process is very painful. Kaido stated that he was willing to endure the pain in order to gain magical abilities. Rumiya asked if the scientist was sure of his decision, because she had once heard a strong warrior who had fought a dragon alone cry his eyes out in pain. The scholar asked not to scare him and better help. The girl started the process and channeled magical energy into Kaido. The scientist immediately felt a piercing pain and could not hold back his screams of terror. Rumiya was no less frightened than Kaido and didn't know how she should act properly in this situation. In a weak voice, the scientist said that he felt much better, and the pain was not as bad as it had been a few minutes ago, although he was still very pale. After a while, the scientist felt much better and felt something previously unknown. Kaido asked if this was the so-called magic power. The winged girl Rumiya was incredibly surprised, for the scholar possessed a huge amount of magic, and she had never seen such a thing before. Kaido admitted that he didn't understand exactly how to assess his powers and only felt their presence. Rumiya shouted that the capabilities of a scholar are much greater than the class of a court magician, and Kaido should hurry up and contain his magical powers. After all, if he released all his magic, he would immediately fall into a coma. Kaido, of course, did not know how to do it, and the girl advised him to take a deep breath and imagine that he was breathing in light. At the same time, one should try to calm down, and usually this is enough for self-control. Kaido was frustrated and thought that it would be very difficult for him to use magic at this rate, but Rumiya explained that it wasn't like that at all, because if there was so much magic power in the scholar, Kaido would be able to use his magic forcefully, even if the formula of the technique was a bit rough. And for now, it would be simple magic with the attributes the scientist was best at. Kaido didn't know exactly what attributes he had, and Rumiya offered to check it out, but warned that this service was chargeable, though not expensive. Kaido explained that he just wanted to know if there was any place where he could work without using magic, and preferably continue to live without using it, since he didn't really like all that magical stuff and was more used to working with his hands and head. Rumiya was surprised at such a wish, for Kaido's strength was amazing. The scientist admitted that he was currently bankrupt and had to use his mental powers to earn money. Rumiya asked if Kaido could fix the house and improve the furnishings in some of the rooms. The guy replied that if he had the right tools and materials, he was quite capable of fixing the problem. The girl exclaimed that since Kaido would do it, she would let him live with her for free for a month and provide free food as well. Rumiya explained that her house had a rather old interior that she was already very bored with. Therefore, Kaido should take care of the renovation, and she had already ordered the necessary materials. The genius scientist thanked for the opportunity to work and for the girl letting him stay at her house for a while. All the tools and materials were stacked under the door, and all that remained was to improve the house. Afterward, Rumiya bid her guest rest and said good night. Kaido was thinking as he fell asleep that he should definitely find a normal job within the next month and secure a steady income. It would also be a good idea to improve his physical fitness and keep it up, because in this world it was an important factor. The morning greeted the genius scientist with a chill, and Kaido wished he hadn't closed the window for the night, as the draft was an unpleasant surprise this night. Kaido decided that he had to get up, but he wanted to wash his face first and then get to work. The scientist thought that the lady of the house would not mind if he used the bathroom without permission and went in search of the right room. Upon exiting the room, Kaido immediately smelled a pleasant odor, and it looked like Rumiya was preparing fresh baked goods. The comfort of home brought a sense of excitement to the genius scientist who was used to loneliness, and it was very pleasant to be in such a house. But to his surprise, Kaido did not find any faucet near the sink and did not immediately realize why this common object was simply not where it should be. It was strange to be in a house that apparently had a sewer system, but no plumbing. And most likely to get water in the yard, there is an ordinary well from which, as in ancient times, Water is taken out with a bucket. But the surprise of the genius scientist increased many times when he found himself on the street. The house in which he found himself was located on an incredibly high mountain, the height of which left no chance for a quick descent down. Kaido felt really annoyed and decided that if a god existed, he obviously had something against him. Abandoning the idea of going down the mountain, the scientist decided to go back inside and get to work. After inspecting all the rooms in the house, Kaido concluded that the interior was indeed quite damaged and some elements needed to be completely replaced. Kaido was disappointed that there was no other option but to replace the entire floor, as all the boards were in very bad condition. Having finished in one room and satisfied with his result, Kaido prepared to work in the living room and took the toolbox. The genius scientist set to work rearranging and cleaning, and it turned out to be not such a difficult task, which even calmed Kaido. While cleaning, Kaido noticed a large number of different books and decided to learn more about the world in which he found himself. After flipping through a few illustrated pages, Kaido was surprised to realize that he could read and understand a language unknown to him and seemed strange. Just at that moment, Rumia's voice was heard, announcing her return. The girl admitted that she was too tired and was surprised at the incredible cleanliness and freshness of her dwelling. Kaido greeted his hostess and continued to wipe the table defiantly. Rumia asked if Kaido had already fixed everything. The scientist explained how he had managed to replace almost the entire floor of the rooms and asked if Rumina was dissatisfied with anything. But the girl was actually delighted. Rumina felt real pleasure when she looked at the clean and renovated house and was glad to know such a skillful man. Kaido was pleased with the results of his work and asked if he could repair the chairs and tables outside, as it would be more convenient. Rumia of course didn't mind and offered the scientist a rest for starters, but Kaido decided to keep working. The winged girl was delighted with the scientist's enthusiasm, for he had indeed improved the condition of her dilapidated house. Until the evening, Kaido repaired the chairs and table and was finally satisfied with his work. The furniture ended up looking like new and could now serve for many more years. Joyful Rumia offered stew for dinner and confessed that she usually cooks it at the end of the month as it is an expensive dish. But today was a special day and Kaido's wonderful work should be celebrated. But the brilliant scientist asked for water and complained of extreme thirst. Rumia realized that her guest had indeed been without water since morning. The girl apologized for her indiscretion and applied the magical call of water, instantly filling the glass with clear, fresh liquid. Kaido gladly quenched his thirst and Rumia did her best to tend to her assistant. The girl filled the glass with water and carefully offered to taste the prepared dish. Kaido appreciated the appearance of the unknown dish and felt his hunger intensified by the pleasant aroma. The dish tasted very good and reminded him of something between a soup and a stew. The stew was perfectly cooked and the texture of the vegetables retained all the flavor and freshness. Also pleased with the seasonings, which were hard to distinguish in the overall flavor bouquet. Among the vegetables, Kaido found carrots, onions, and mushrooms, and considering the color and taste of the stew, there were clearly very ripe tomatoes in this dish. Considering all this, there were almost no obvious differences from the food Kaido was used to, and at one point the scholar found himself thinking about his native Japan. Rumia asked permission to ask a question and wondered if Kaido's main occupation was furniture maker or carpenter. Kaido explained that this was not the case and that his main job was as a researcher and inventor. And the content of his research is quite diverse, from crops to the design of various structures. After finishing dinner, Kaido thanked for the delicious food and praised Rumina's cooking skills. The girl, in turn, thanked him for his help with the repairs and admitted that she was really happy to meet them. Kaido then asked why Rumina was in a bad mood when she got home and what exactly bad things had happened. Rumina explained that she had long intended to hunt down and kill the horned tiger she had been hunting for the past few days. But due to unknown reasons, this mighty monster had died in the middle of the field, and there were not even any visible injuries on it. All this search for the horned tiger proved too tiring and, alas, did not bring the pleasure of hunting. Kaido wondered if Rumia was referring to a large horned tiger with green fur. The girl was surprised and replied that that was the animal she had found. Kaido admitted that he was the one who was able to kill the horned tiger with his weapon, and it came out for self-defense since the tiger had attacked him. The scientist explained that he had to do so because otherwise he would have been just an appetizer for the huge beast's lunch. The winged girl was amazed and asked if Kaido had suffered any wounds during the battle. The scholar explained that he had managed to successfully repel the tiger's attack and asked that didn't Ruina notice the burn on the animal's belly. The girl recalled not really paying much attention to the strange spot, and Kaido demonstrated his super-powered stun gun. The genius scientist explained that the shock of such a weapon could kill any opponent regardless of size. Ruina thought it was a bit silly, as she found it hard to believe in the power of such a strange little object. But Kaido explained that there was only one use left in this weapon, and after that it would be impossible to defend oneself as effectively. Kaido stated that he would be happy if Ruina could help strengthen his body with magic power. The girl didn't refuse and decided to help her new friend. Rumi explained that first, Kaido should try to release the magic from his body and make the kind of magical image he saw around him yesterday. Then the glowing magical power would have to be placed on the area of the body that needed to be strengthened. The scientist tried it, and he gradually succeeded. Rumia then showed how it worked by example and suggested that he break the board. Kaido repeated exactly what the girl had done and was able to break a fairly strong board with a single blow. Rumi explained that if you spread the magic power over the whole body would be strengthened in the same way. However, it should not be forgotten that such manipulation consumes too much magical energy. Kaido understood the principle and liked the result very much. Rumi had told about her plans to visit the magic lab tomorrow and asked if Kaido wanted to go with her. At that, the girl promised to give her new friend money if he needed funds. The scientist didn't mind going for a walk and thought about such a possibility. Rumia, pouring the fragrant tea, once again thanked Kaido for the repaired furniture. After a short thought, Kaido wondered if Rumia would be able to carry him in her arms again like last time. The girl once again reminded herself that Kaido couldn't use magic on his own yet. The scientist explained that it would be very difficult for him to leave the area where the house was located, and it would take too much time and effort for him to go downstairs. Rumia understood and apologized for the inconvenient location of her dwelling. Kaido sipped his tea and asked if Rumia always lived alone in such a remote place, as there was a lot of furniture in the house for one person. The girl said that she is actually a mercenary and a member of the same group, and when they are not working, they can live anywhere and do their own thing. That said, sometimes her co-workers and subordinates, when they are too bored, come to visit, and they relax together. Although lately, for some reason, no one comes anymore and maybe everyone is busy with some important business. Kaido asked if Rumia really knew so much about war since she was doing such a dangerous job as a mercenary. The genius scholar became very curious if the people of this magical world used any technological weapons for war. Rumia didn't really understand what exactly Kaido meant and explained that it was much more useful to build arm strength with magic, as it would allow for more effective archery. Rumia then talked about weapons that don't require magic. Rumia quickly went to her room and brought out a gun that she said was only 3 years old and was the latest model. The girl then admitted that she was mistaken and proudly declared that this gun was only 2 years old. Kaido, however, was surprised to see a real flintlock shotgun, for in his world he could only find such a piece in a museum. The scientist immediately realized what level of technological progress this world was at and decided that if he could find an excellent blacksmith, it would be possible to make a gun with special ammunition. Such an advanced weapon could instantly upset the military balance of this world. It is also easy to assume that thanks to such advanced technology, it will be possible to make excellent money, because everyone will want to get something that will give them an advantage. Kaido realized how huge this temptation was and decided that it would most likely make things even worse in this world because of it. Of course, such weapons development would make money, but in the end, someone innocent was bound to get hurt, so it wasn't a good idea to go into that kind of business. Rumia noticed Kaido's concern and asked if he was alright. The scientist only replied that he was just thinking about his future. Kaido decided that there was no point in thinking about any development at all at the moment, since he had no money. Rumia admitted that she was very interested in the weapon that was able to kill the horned tiger and wanted to know why it could only be used once. Kaido didn't know how to explain and asked if Rumia knew what electricity was. The girl said that it is the energy that makes lightning appear. The scientist praised the girl for such knowledge and explained that the source of energy for his powerful weapon is just such electricity, and it cannot be used when a certain amount of this energy runs out. Rumiya suggested in this case to try to sell the stun gun, because the weapon that could kill the horned tiger with one blow will definitely be in good demand. Although well-trained mercenaries using magical powers can also effectively fight such monsters, Rumiya suggested to Kaido that if he couldn't find a suitable job, he should enlist as a mercenary and she would train him. The scholar asked if Rumiya was a real mercenary commander. She admitted that she had her own squad and could make Kaido a real mid-level officer within a month if he didn't get scared and run away. But the scientist stated that he was 24 years old and was no longer a little boy who could be scared of something. It turned out that the brilliant scientist was older than his possible commander and pointed out his advantage. But Rumiya instantly showed her superior physical strength and advised her not to speak to her commander like that again. The girl was much stronger than the brilliant scientist and eventually made him say that he was wrong and considered Rumiya to be a more experienced person with vast life experience. Rumiya then suggested Kaido to take a bath. After all, he had been working all day and he needed to freshen up. With a quick movement of her hand, the girl used magic to fill the bathtub with clean water. Also, the scientist needed to change into something clean. Kaido asked if it was possible to dry clothes with magic after hand washing. But Rumiya warned that it could severely damage the fabric, as her magic was too coarse. But the scholar decided that it wouldn't be a big deal. Washing by hand was indeed very uncomfortable, and it was a reminder to Kaido of how dependent we are on the tools of civilization. The girl asked what Kaido's robe was made of since he was so confident in its durability. The scientist proudly stated that it was a brand new material that he had been researching for a long time. Such a robe would be able to withstand even a few minutes if thrown into a long oven. Ruina wondered if the robe could withstand her magic and decided to test it. Kaido suggested hitting it with something fiery and seeing for herself how strong it was. The winged girl immediately summoned a blazing flame to listen to her voice, and in a few seconds a bright flash of magical fire enveloped the snow-white robe. Rumiya was delighted with the unique fabric, for there was not a trace of fire left on the robe. The girl asked whether a person could withstand high temperatures if he was completely covered with such a cloth. But the scientist nodded his head in the negative, and Rumiya asked in surprise what was the point of such a robe. The scientist frankly admitted that the whole point was the process of inventing something new. In the morning, Rumiya decided not to stay late and have a ham and cheese sandwich for breakfast on the way, as she was in a hurry. But at the same time, the girl didn't forget to fill a glass with water so that Kaido wouldn't feel uncomfortable again. After a short time of packing, it was time to hit the road. Kaido felt excitement before the actual flight. It was very unusual to think that he would be in the sky in the arms of a girl. But Rumiya did not feel any discomfort from the weight of the scientist and floated in the sky with ease. The girl's strength allowed her to carry such loads over quite a long distance. After a while, the girl thoughtfully asked if Kaido wanted a snack, since they had been traveling for a long time. But the scientist explained that it was unlikely that he would be very comfortable eating breakfast in this position. After flying a decent distance, Rumiya all began to gradually descend, and eventually they ended up at the Magic Inspection Guild of the Western Branch of Forestia. The receptionist politely greeted the guild guests and inquired about the stranger next to Rumina, as she had never seen this guy in country clothes before. Rumina introduced Kaido and called him her new neighbor. The receptionist girl gave her rather long name as Cirrus Fedocia Guran and motioned to proceed to the measuring room, with Cirrus pointing in the right direction. Cirrus asked Kaido to stand in the right place and try to release his magic power. The admin girl was very surprised at the measurement result, for the color of Kaido's magic power was completely white without any other impurities and the like she had never seen before. There are usually 6 colors that indicate the attribute of magic power, and all 6 colors never appear white even if they are mixed all together. And pure white is not included in these 6 colors at all. Cirrus asked to wait a while she readjusted the measuring machine, for there had probably been a malfunction. At the same time, Cirrus decided that dark green was the most ideal color for a human, and it meant the presence of the wind attribute. The guild administrator girl asked her to wait for a while and decided to check something. Soon, Cirrus returned with a weighty stack of books and apologized for keeping her waiting. Cirrus asked the guests if they knew anything about the Citadel King. Rumiya was surprised at such a question and visibly perked up. Cirrus explained that if the Citadel King's magic revived in the current era, it would be an incredible event. The Citadel King will be able to have a great impact on the world, but it is not known until the end whether it will lead to good changes or bad. The sign of a Citadel King is a single unmistakable color. This attribute is an unclouded, crystal clear white color. It is this white color that the attribute of Kaido possesses and signifies the ability to create. Cirrus stated that she is absolutely certain that Kaido is one of those rare people who only appear once every few hundred years. But as a rule, such people learn of their abilities when they are examined as children. The genius scientist explained that he had once lost touch with magic and thus didn't understand all of his powers. Kaido inquired exactly what he could do with his legendary magic. Cirrus explained that creation magic is the kind of magic that creates something that the wielder has once seen and can reproduce. It is also said that a Citadel King can build 10 fortresses in a single day to provide his army with endless supplies and defense. It is also known that the Citadel King can create magical items from ancient times, and only he is capable of doing so. Such an explanation pleased Kaido very much, for he could once again use all the accumulated knowledge he had gained throughout his life. The Girl Guild administrator showed the documents and explained that they recorded all the existing types of creature magic, and she would allow you to familiarize yourself with their contents. And this knowledge would allow Kaido to understand his abilities and capabilities much better. Cirrus explained that with the simplest of techniques one could build a large bookshelf, for example, and with complex techniques one could build a massive castle. But right now, Kaido apparently wasn't ready yet and had to study the documents. But the scientist decided to take the practical route first and called on all the elements that make up the world to help him. Kaido followed Rumina's advice and tried to mentally execute the setup and create the necessary formula for creation. Eventually, the experiment was successful and a snow-white robe created by magic appeared in the room. This was a true confirmation that the scientist could use the creation attribute. Rumiya and Cirrus were delighted by this result, but Kaido proudly declared that this was just the beginning. The process of magical creation didn't seem that difficult to Kaido, and the scholar decided that he would now be able to fulfill most of his wishes. The paperwork stated that creation magic could be used with inanimate matter and life forms could only be created as plants. Syria reminded him that she had never had time to fully measure the scientist's magical power and offered to use a special large measuring device. To begin with, the admin girl decided to check on Rumiya and found out that her magic power was currently about 16,300,000 units and Rumiya had managed to gain about 20,000 in the last month. Syria rejoiced for the winged girl's success, but she also admitted that she was not a fan of her cruel methods. Then, Syria pointed a special device at the genius scientist and asked him not to move from his seat. The admin girl wasn't sure with the result and asked to wait a bit for clarification. But after a few minutes of examination, Syria asked Kaido to go through the measurement process once more. In the end, the incredibly surprised girl declared that Kaido's magic power was at least 700 million units, and that was an amazing figure. Kaido was completely ignorant of the criteria for measuring magic power and wondered how much it was. Syria replied that it was enough to create another lab coat for her. Kaido easily replicated the robe's creation, and Syria found out that of the scientist's total magic power. Only 775,000 was original magic. Rumiya rather smugly stated that it was a laughable amount of magic for the index of original magic. Kaido never realized how strong his magic power was. Syria explained that creature magic was something crazy and the total magic power of a first-class wizard was usually less than 1 million. Kaido offered to measure his magic power once more. After all, he wanted to know for sure what he was capable of. This time, the genius scientists decided to create a 3-unit fruit knife, 3 porcelain plates, 2 white robes, and a huge ripe mango. After taking another measurement, Syria said that the amount of magic power she had reduced didn't affect the total, and as far as she was concerned, no matter what Kaido created, the magic consumption was the same. The scientist himself decided to taste the flavor of the created fruit and was pleasantly surprised by the wonderful mango that came from magic. Rumiya immediately wanted to taste the unknown fruit and asked to give her a piece. Kaido offered to use a fork and a plate after all. That's why he created everything in triplicate. Both girls were delighted by the incredibly sweet and thick flavor of the ripe mango. Neither of them had eaten anything like it before. I enjoyed the pleasant smelling and feeling of fruity sweetness. The girls' plates emptied very quickly, and Kaido offered to let Shiria take some from his slice, but the girl wasn't sure if it was okay to do so. Rumiya tried to intervene in the situation and said that she, as the landlord, should get a refill first. The winged girl managed to get ahead of her rival and was first at the plate. Kaido was surprised by this action, and together with Syria pointed out that Rumiya hadn't even finished her portion yet. But the winged girl explained that she simply couldn't refuse such bliss since she had never eaten anything so delicious before. Rumiya complained about working too hard and reminded that she could die in any of her missions, and so she wanted to enjoy every moment of life. Syria of course knew how dangerous a profession Rumiya had chosen for herself and asked her friend to be more careful during her adventures as a mercenary group commander. Kaido admitted that he didn't understand much, but also wished Rumiya to be careful. After enjoying a wonderful ripe mango, Rumiya exclaimed that she now wanted to live a new life. Syria, on the other hand, was saddened to see her plate empty. Syria said quite insincerely that she was sorry since there were no more mangoes left for Rumiya. The winged girl immediately decided to teach her friend a lesson and chased after her. Watching the childish behavior of the adult girls, Kaido thought that they should have made some more ripe fruit. Soon the girls did return to the room, and judging by the way Rumiya carried her friend in her arms, the result of their confrontation was in the winged girl's favor. Kaido was surprised at their relationship and asked if the mango was really that good. Syria replied that such a beautiful fruit was good enough to satisfy the royal family. Rumiya explained that her friend was actually the daughter of the Marquis, and since she said so, it was really true. The ingenious scholars asked how profitable it would be to sell such fruits and if they could make money. Syria suggested that such wonderful fruits could cost at least 20,000 pounds apiece, and that was a very good price. Kaido was not well versed in the prices of this world and asked the winged girl how much she spent per month on food. Rumina explained that it was about 80,000, but it was 4 times the normal amount. Kaido decided that such prices could have a big impact on the local farmers, and it might be worth starting by trading cherries and persimmons. Syria was delighted at the prospect and asked if the scientist could really create other high-quality fruits so that she could enjoy the unexplored flavor. Kaido very quickly created beautiful cherries and persimmons, the flavor of which the girls liked very much. Syria immediately offered to start trading the fruit in her personal mansion. Kaido was interested in such an opportunity, but asked to observe one condition, that the girls not spread about his magic creation attribute. Syria was a little saddened and asked if it was because this information could reach the royal family through her. The brilliant scientist admitted that he really wanted to avoid people in power, because there was no telling what they might do to achieve their goals. But Syria explained that rumors would still spread despite all the warnings. Kaido explained that he could strengthen his powers while it would remain a secret, but afterward he would help with various problems. Kaido asked if Ruina would be able to keep information about his incredible magical power secret. The winged girl immediately made conditions and asked for a dessert for herself every week, while promising to take care of transportation. Syria praised her friend for being resourceful and enterprising. The winged girl then offered to show Kaido the weapon with which he was able to defeat the horned tiger, since Syria could quite possibly buy it for a decent price. The genius scientist demonstrated his improved stun gun and inquired how much it could be sold for. Syria of course did not know of such a weapon and admitted that it was difficult for her to give an appraisal and put a price on it. Kaido decided not to continue the discussion about the stun gun and used the ability he had learned about from the magic memo. Thanks to some properties, he could make the magic item he created disappear. Syria admitted that she had one interesting suggestion. The girl explained that since Kaido really wanted to hide his magic, he would need access to literature, and she could offer to use her family's library, since they were actually originally documents belonging to her. The genius scholar agreed to such a proposal and promised the administrator to bring 40 pieces of persimmons as a token of gratitude. Rumiya offered to go shopping in the meantime and said goodbye to her friend. Syria wished her friends good luck and gave them a glance with a little sadness. The girl was glad to meet such an unusual person like Kaido and wanted to meet him as soon as possible. After Syria was alone, she served her subordinate and assigned her an important task. The guild administrator asked Sharon to follow the person who was with Rumina and report all of his actions. The assistant promised to complete the task and immediately set off in pursuit. Syria realized that the scientist, in addition to his incredible creation magic, also possessed an unknown weapon of unknown origin, and so it was imperative for her to find out who he really was. During the flight, Kaido still decided to have some snacks, but the sandwiches he had prepared were too little. Rumia suggested eating lunch in the city when they reached it, and that was not a bad idea. But suddenly, a giant eagle appeared in the sky. Such animals were twice the size of an adult male common eagle and possessed a sharp beak with which they could mortally wound almost any opponent. Rumia immediately assessed the degree of danger and immediately released the scientist from her hands and sent him into free fall. At the same time, the girl promised to return soon once she dealt with the dangerous monster. Rumia was indeed an experienced mercenary and immediately attacked the giant eagle with lightning speed. As soon as the girl's sharp blade mortally wounded the giant eagle, she immediately caught Kaido and prevented him from painfully meeting the ground. After recovering a little from his fright, Kaido asked how often Rumia encountered such creatures. The girl explained that giant eagles didn't usually live in this area, and that this monster had probably flown here because of a lack of food. After a while, the city of Canal City appeared in the distance, and Kaido decided that it would be curious to see the local settlement. Rumia landed on a city street and made sure Kaido was okay after such a not-so-easy flight. The visitors to the city found themselves in the city's shopping district, where they could buy everything they needed. However, Rumia wanted to find a specific place and tried to remember where exactly it was. Suddenly, the girl was greeted by a huge guy with an incredibly large sword and asked if she had finally found a boyfriend. But the winged maiden explained that Kaido was her new neighbor and they were just friends, so no need to fantasize. The huge mercenary's name was Gates Kruger, and despite his colossal size, he turned out to be a rather friendly guy. Kruger said that if Rumia and her friend came to town to visit the store, it could be found in the central square where it had recently opened. The brilliant scientist inquired why most people in the town were armed. The explanation was quite simple, because all these people were mercenaries and judging by their number, they were not much less than the locals. Kruger explained that new medicinal herbs had been discovered in the nearby forest, and so the town was filled with mostly third-rate adventurers. Therefore, upon closer inspection, one can see the difference between experienced adventurers and newcomers. Kaido noticed a group of cocky adventurers trying to force a girl to go along with them. The genius scientist advised the guys to get behind the girl and look in the mirror for starters, because you shouldn't approach women with such faces at all. The three aggressive adventurers immediately reacted to the insult and angrily demanded Kaido to repeat his words. The scientist explained that they completely lacked the character and intelligence to pick up a beautiful woman in a normal way and therefore relied only on rudeness and boorishness. Kaido then stated that adventurers are completely incompetent in matters of communication, and it is better for them to stay away from normal people. The scientist also hinted that such behavior makes them the most banal third-rate adventurers who are not capable of anything. The guys were really bad at thinking and couldn't understand all the words he said, so they just offered the smart guy in the white coat a fight. Kaido explained that he was several steps ahead and completely superior in development to such rude guys. But such self-assured statements only caused a surge of anger and aggression from the rude adventurers, who rewarded the brilliant scientist with the most unpleasant insults. Kaido realized that there was no way to negotiate with these guys, and so he hurriedly applied magical body enhancement. Thanks to the physical enhancement, Kaido was able to deal with the impertinent opponents in just a few blows and proved his physical superiority. Kruger and Rumia praised the scientist for his willingness to help the damsel in distress, although they didn't expect him to be so aggressive, since he looks much friendlier. But Kaido explained that the desire to help the girl was not the main purpose of his action. All this was done for the sake of an experiment to finally find out how effective the magic enhancement was. Kruger admitted that Kaido was someone he didn't want to antagonize, so it was better for them to be on friendly terms. But suddenly, two more daring adventurers came running to the brute's aid. Kaido was ready, and thanks to his improved strength and reaction, he sent his attackers into a deep knockout. The genius scientist felt encouraged and told the adventurers that they were really pathetic individuals who could not help but socialize and fight. Rumia was delighted at her friend's success and suggested that they go to Missile's store soon. Kruger traveled along with Rumia and Kaido. The big-hearted adventurer promised to buy everyone a beer and drink to the acquaintance of a strong guy like Kaido. Misilla owned her own store and restaurant called Little Happiness. This cafe store was famous for its very delicious food and nice friendly atmosphere. Misilla was happy to see Rumia and immediately went out to meet. The shopkeeper immediately asked if the winged girl had finally gotten a boyfriend. Rumia was not surprised at such a banal assumption. Misilla immediately provided the menu and Rumia wanted to order roasted golden pork shoulder, and Kaido ordered roasted vegetables with beef on the advice of the hostess. Kruger hesitated slightly and reread the menu several times. But the shopkeeper decided to do otherwise and took the huge mercenary with her to help her with the cooking. Kruger certainly didn't want to work, but in this case he couldn't refuse. Kruger asked Rumia not to forget and ordered a pint of beer for him. The girl of course promised to do so and said that she and Misilla had a great relationship. Kaido watched all of this in surprise and decided that this wasn't the worst display of friendship. While the food was being prepared in the kitchen and Kruger was clearly following all the orders of the hostess of the place, the guests were just waiting and chatting. Rumia asked what Kaido was thinking about, and the brilliant scientist confessed that he missed his parents. The girl asked for more details and thought that Kaido did not get along well with them. But as it turned out, the scientist's parents disappeared without a trace when he was only 12 years old. Kaido explained that the mystery of their disappearance had never been solved. It was unclear why they had disappeared, since they couldn't have run away since they had enough money and influence to live peacefully even without working. Kaido then suggested to change the topic and not talk about sad things. After a few minutes, the hostess of the place also appeared, who apologized for waiting and placed plates of fragrant food on the table. Rumia was delighted with the wonderful taste of the rice and confessed that she could not eat bread anymore after the first time she tasted it. Kaido, like a true Japanese, also chose rice as an accompaniment to the main meal. The hostess of the establishment quickly brought small plates of rice and suggested using chopsticks. But Rumia rejected the idea as it was still very difficult for her to use this Asian attribute of cuisine. Rumia was delighted with the delicious food and admitted that she couldn't stop eating, even though she felt full. Kaido agreed with his companion, for the local food was indeed of high quality and reminded him very much of his native Japan. The flavor of the rice was incredibly rich as it was cooked the right way. Kaido didn't even have time to notice that his plate was quickly emptied. Rumia watched with interest as the genius scientist deftly used the chopsticks, since she couldn't handle them herself. Kaido promised to teach her the skill next time. For dessert, the hostess brought milk ice cream. This ice cream was made from fresh milk and was frozen with magic, so it had an incredibly fresh flavor. Rumia explained that the ice cream at this establishment was much tastier than any other cafe, so she always dined here. Kaido marveled at how happy a girl could be with delicious food. Deciding that it was already time for them to go, Rumia asked to bring the bill. The winged girl, after paying for all the dishes, left some money for Kruger since she promised to treat him to a cold beer. After that, the friends went shopping, which turned out to be not so little. Rumia suggested that the scientist wait for her at some place and not carry heavy weights. Kaido agreed to this idea, as it was really not easy for him to keep up with the girl. The winged girl set off for further shopping and promised to return as soon as possible. Kaido in the meantime decided to rest and meditate for a while. The first thing the brilliant scientist noticed was the clock tower. The hands and dial were quite familiar, and Kaido realized that in this world, the 12-hour system was considered the norm. But suddenly Kaido felt someone crash into him, and it turned out to be a little girl who dropped her hairpin and immediately began to cry. The hairpin couldn't withstand the impact on the sidewalk and split into two pieces. The sobbing little girl complained that she had been saving up money for a very long time and was only able to buy the thing today, and now it was broken. Kaido tried to calm the small child down, but it proved to be an incredibly difficult task. Soon the mother also came running, who heard the cries of her beloved daughter Fannel. The brilliant scientist decided to help the child and asked the mother to wait a little while. Kaido promised to create exactly the same hairpin and give it as a free gift. The girl was surprised and immediately stopped crying, and Kaido explained that he would definitely be able to do it, since he never cheats little children. The scientist quite skillfully began using a knife to create a similar hairpin from a piece of wood, and the girl watched the whole process very carefully. Soon the hairpin was ready, and this brought real joy to the girl, who called Kaido her brother and thanked him for the gift. The overjoyed mother went on with her daughter, and Kaido wished the girl to be more careful. Just at that moment, Rumiya returned with her shopping and noticed that Kaido wasted no time. In addition to all the heavy items, the brilliant scientist was now carrying a huge bag of meat and was not upset when Rumiya said that they had no time to visit the armory and had to return home. Once home, they needed to figure out what kind of dish to make for dinner. Kaido offered his help and explained that he would like to try something and surprise them with his culinary talent. Kaido prepared many different foods such as rice, seaweed, pickled radish, sauce, also clean water, and a capacious wok. Rumiya was interested in the process and asked what kind of dish it would make. The scientist explained that he was going to make soup. While making preparations, Kaido decided that he could make a meat-based soup, since it was too difficult to make a surimi-based soup. To begin, the scholar put well-washed rice on the fire. After that, Kaido carefully sliced the pickled radish, and since the wok on the fire was already boiling, he decided to take it off the fire and wait for it to cool down. After that, it was necessary to add to the resulting broth natto and fried tofu, and as soon as all this substance is steamed, it should be removed from the fire. After that, it is necessary to pour the soup over and reboil it on low heat. Rumiya was delighted with the whole process of making the soup and confessed that she really liked the pleasant flavor of the dish. Kaido decided that just in the meantime, the rice had already cooked. The young scholar then served the rice along with the soup and suggested that the girl not be shy and eat while everything was hot. The girl tasted with great interest and surprise a dish she had never eaten before. Having tasted the soup and the specially prepared rice, Rumiya exclaimed that it was all incredibly delicious and perfectly combined with each other. Meanwhile, Kaido decided to make musubi from the leftover rice and fry it over low coals. For a change, Kaido decided to dip some musubi in soup and some in soy sauce. Rumiya loved the smell of the new unknown dish and wondered how much longer to wait. But Kaido replied that everything was already ready and it was okay to try. The musubi looked amazing, and the girl immediately grabbed a plate to try the strange pieces of fried rice as soon as possible. The wonderful flavor of the fried rice really pleased the winged girl, and she asked why it had such a strange taste. Kaido explained that it was all due to the soy sauce created from ordinary soybeans, and it was what gave any dish a rich flavor. Kaido offered to make another dish like this if Rumiya liked it. The girl did not hesitate to make as much as possible, because she could eat as much of this kind of fried rice as she wanted. Kaido suggested that the girl try mixing the soup with the rice, and although it's not usually done that way, it's also very tasty. Rumiya followed the advice without a second thought and experienced the great flavor of the unusual combination of foods. Kaido said that soup could also be made from fish, but it was not capable of creating living things. Rumiya replied that you could have just told her that earlier, and then she would have bought the fish. But this way she would have to wait for her next visit to the city. Rumiya admitted that she was very engrossed, so she didn't notice the unusual rice, which was tastier than what she usually ate. Kaido has indeed created a rice of the highest quality grown with the latest technology. This rice is dried using only sunlight, while plain rice is dried using a special machine. Rumiya was fascinated by Kaido's culinary skills and asked him to prepare new dishes every day while he was at her home. But the brilliant scientist said that first he needed to do his immediate work. Rumiya reminded Kaido of his plans to sell fruits with the help of Cirrus, and if he asked her, Cirrus could introduce her to good and wealthy customers. Kaido asked if the Duke's daughter had such great connections. Rumiya explained that Cirrus knows a lot of people, and not helping her can really be invaluable. Syria is such a sociable girl that there is no one in the aristocracy she doesn't know. In addition to that, Syria has great influence among merchants and artisans. Kaido wondered how such a young girl had such serious connections among influential people. Rumiya explained that not only was Syria the daughter of an aristocrat, but she was also well versed in the arms trade as she had the skills of an average adventurer. Kaido was surprised by such information and said that none of this sounds like someone who grew up in warmth and comfort, and in all likelihood Syria is skilled in doing shady business. During the conversation, it was getting late in the evening and Rumiya decided that she would get some exercise and go to bed. Kaido wished the girl a good night and also decided to rest after a busy day. Meanwhile, in her mansion, Sirius read the detailed scouting report and learned how Kaido had rescued a girl in the city and then acted as a porter for Rumia. Also, Sirius learned about how Kaido helped a little girl and created a wooden hairpin for her. All of this spoke of the young scientist's fine human qualities. Sirius decided that judging from his actions, one could conclude that Kaido was a decent enough person. The scout Sharon explained that this was indeed true, and she had mentioned it more than once in her report. But also Sharon noticed the scientist gaze towards the adventurers he was fighting, and at that moment the scientist's gaze was very frightening. In that situation, Kaido was very similar to the captain. Syria was surprised at this view of the assistant and asked that did Kaido not see people as something worthwhile, but if the scientist was such a cruel person, then how could the situation with the little girl and her hairpin be explained? Sharon admitted that she cannot answer this question because she has no ability to evaluate people, and this question would be better dealt with by the captain or even Miss Syria herself. It was noticeable how Sharon began to worry and Syria asked her assistant to calm down. Syria decided that it was necessary to gradually study Kaido since she had every opportunity to do so. Sharon asked her mistress why she was taking such a keen interest in this man. But Syria stated that there was no more need to keep an eye on Kaido, and that she would now take care of that personally. And Rumia would be an excellent card in her hands. Sharon was surprised at such cunning plans of the mistress from listening to every word with interest. Siri exclaimed that she had full confidence in her abilities and would definitely achieve the desired result as she always achieves her goals. Syria still thought that there might be a gap in her calculations the next time she met this young scientist. But no matter what, her main goal was to become a good friend to Kaido and capitalize on it. After all, it makes no sense to turn such a powerful man against himself. Especially he can be very useful since his magic power is unique. The next morning, Rumia and Kaido went to deliver the goods to Syria, and as usual, the young scholar carried all the heavy weights. The winged girl reported that they were already at the location and pointed to the beautiful mansion of Syria. At the entrance of the mansion, the guests were greeted by the butler Ulrich Krantz, who was happy to see Rumia. The curious butler then inquired about the contents of the crates brought in. Kaido invited Krantz to examine the goods and taste the fruit for himself. The butler made sure that the goods were safe and explained that the payment for the goods would be made personally by Mrs. Sirius. The mistress of the mansion welcomed the guests into a very beautiful living room and invited them to settle in. Sirius suggested that they not waste any time and get right down to business. Kaido decided to give the initiative to the aristocrat's daughter and invited Syria to give her ideas. Syria said that if Kaido was satisfied with any price offered, she would be happy to offer the minimum. The young scholar replied that he certainly valued Miss Syria's opinion, but would not want to undervalue the quality of his goods because of too low a price. The mistress of the mansion appreciated Kaido's ability to negotiate and did not argue about the price anymore. Syria asked Krantz to prepare 120,000 and give it to the guests. Syria decided to buy the fruit at 3,000 apiece. This angered the butler, but the hostess suggested that Krantz see for himself the quality of the goods. Syria decided that Kaido-sen had filled the drawers to the max and ordered the chef to be called immediately. The butler instantly went to carry out the mistress's errand, and in a few minutes, the beautiful young woman chef Scarlet Sharkwood appeared in the room. Syria asked Scarlet to evaluate and give her opinion on the fruit that Kaido-san provided. Scarlet was a little doubtful that persimmons should be classified as fruit, but she didn't bother to correct her hostess and just carefully took a piece of the fragrant fruit with a fork. Scarlet found herself delighted with the rich flavor of persimmons and stated that it was a certainty that even at the royal table there was nothing like it. The chef admitted that she is already looking forward to using this wonderful fruit in various dishes, and she thinks persimmons would look great warmed or frozen. Butler Krantz was more reserved and silently enjoyed the flavor of persimmons. Syria asked Scarlet what she thought the price of such fruit was. The chef suggested a price of 1,400 apiece. After thinking for a bit, Scarlet corrected her estimate and said that the price should be a maximum of 1,000 and 1,500. Syria immediately suggested that Kaido listen to the professional's estimate. The scholar hesitated to answer and Syria suggested a price of 60,000 for 40 pieces of persimmons. Kaido admitted that he still expected more, but in the end he still agreed to the offer. After the deal was finalized, Sierra offered to talk for a while, unless of course Kaido and Rumiya were in no hurry to go anywhere. Also, Sierra asked Butler Krantz to take care of the payment and prepare the right amount. As soon as the butler left the room, Rumiya called Sierra a sly fox and suggested that she originally wanted to underestimate the real price of the goods. The mistress of the mansion did not deny it and stated that haggling was an integral part of business. The aristocrat's daughter then admitted that she regretted that Krantz was not able to negotiate so effectively, because it would have been easier for her to conduct business then. Kaido replied that he had encountered such clients in the past who tried to drive down the price in this way, so he understood such motives. Chef Scarlet pretended not to understand what was going on at all. Kaido asked Rumiya what she thought the butler's reaction would have been if the price of 60,000 had originally been voiced. The winged girl replied that most likely the reaction would have been exactly the same. After all, 1,500 for a single fruit wasn't a bad price either. But the young scholar explained how he noticed the considerable relief on the butler's face when the final price was voiced. Rumiya agreed and realized that this whole show was deliberately set up by Syria just to lower the price, and perhaps the butler wasn't really aware of the plan. And it was likely that the butler was genuinely surprised when he first heard the inflated price, and then rejoiced when it was lowered. Kaido clarified that Scarlet had also played an important role in this whole plan. The scholar asked Rumiya if she had negotiated the price with Syria in advance. Scarlet exclaimed that she was not good at pretending and the price she offered was really fair. Kaido asked Scarlet if she needed any more vegetables, fruits, or perhaps spices. Chef Scarlet immediately thought of soy sauce and asked her to bring her at least a few liters of this wonderful product. Kaido was surprised that soy sauce had already become so famous in this world and promised to fulfill this order next time for sure. The young scientist then suggested Scarlet to try dried persimmons. The girl liked the tart taste of the dried fruit very much, and Scarlet realized that since persimmons could be dried, they could be stored for a very long time. Syria and Rumiya immediately wanted to taste the dried persimmon, and like two predatory cats began to approach the owner of the tasty fruit. Rumiya grabbed the young scientist and made Kaido worried. The boy asked her not to hurt him and admitted that he didn't understand what was going on at all. Syria asked her friend to be careful with Kaido, because only he is able to give them incredible products. The excited scientist realized that Rumiya was offended because he had given the dried persimmons to Scarlet and offered his winged friend something delicious. Rumiya demanded not to delay and Kaido offered the girl candy. Meanwhile, Syria took advantage of the moment to start eating persimmons and marveled at the wonderful flavor. Rumiya was indignant and said that it was unseemly to take without asking, but Syria replied that speed was the most important thing in this case. Kaido, on the other hand, explained that this time the mistress of the mansion had tasted dried persimmons. The young scholar explained that it was common to dry wild persimmons, which had an astringent effect when fresh. Syria admitted that the sweet flavor of the fruit is amazing. Scarlet, on the other hand, suggested that it's the drying process that brings out the sweetness, and at the same time, the unpleasant astringency disappears. The chef marveled at this unusual method. Kaido then suggested that the winged girl try fried yams. Rumiya thought it was just a regular fried potato without butter and refused to eat it. Syria decided to try the yams and gave her friend a chocolate bar. Rumiya said that the chocolate bar was quite ordinary, but it was still delicious. Syria, on the other hand, enjoyed the honey yam and admitted that it was so sweet that many fruits do not even taste that good. Syria went on to describe the incredible sensation of the yam and made her friend regret that she refused to eat this strange fruit. Rumiya could not restrain her curiosity and asked to taste at least a piece. But Sierra reminded her that Rumiya had exchanged the yam for a chocolate bar, which she had already managed to eat. In the end, the winged girl still tasted the honey yam and was surprised at the great taste of ordinary potatoes. Rumiya admitted that she had no idea that an ordinary potato could be so sweet. Syria explained that she trusted Kaido completely, and so she was rewarded with such a sweet fruit. Rumiya remembered how as a child, she was constantly forced to eat potatoes for lunch due to the fact that her family was too big and didn't have enough money for proper food. In those distant times, the little girl dreamed of eating fresh bread every day. Potatoes were considered too cheap food that was only meant to satisfy hunger. This prejudice was going to wreak havoc with Rumiya. Kaido joked that he even felt a little resentful since Rumiya distrusted him as much as he did. The winged girl rewarded Syria and Kaido with various insulting words for making silly jokes. Syria apologized to Scarlet for being distracted from her work. But the chief cook replied that it was no big deal and she was happy to meet the guests of the mansion. Syria then asked if there was anything else she could do to help Kaido. The young scholar didn't understand what exactly the mansion's mistress meant. Syria decided to be blunt and asked that Kaido probably had some good reason why he was forced to stay at Rumia's house. Rumia at this point reminded him that she still didn't fully trust Kaido and needed to understand that. The young scholar admitted that he doesn't understand anything at all about what's going on right now. Syria agreed that it was indeed hard to believe such a story, but nevertheless, Rumia's words didn't seem like a deception to her. Therefore, it's likely that Kaido is still intentionally holding back something important. Rumia asked Kaido not to worry about her secret because she realized it from the beginning, but still let him stay. Therefore, there was no need to tell the whole truth right now. The young scientist thanked for understanding and promised that someday he would definitely tell about how he came into this world. Syria decided not to argue with Rumia and only listened attentively. Then, Syria offered to finish things and confessed that she actually enjoyed learning a lot of new things. Kaido promised to tell everything as soon as he gathered more information himself, and perhaps that would be very soon. Syria saw this as an opportunity and offered her help. Kaido immediately asked if there was a good library nearby. But Syria explained that unfortunately there were no libraries at all in Schutzburg. The young scholar resented such ignorance and exclaimed that any country is doomed without knowledge. Syria agreed with Kaido's words and spoke of how many scholars were leaving the country. It is not surprising though, as other countries have all the conditions for them to do research. The only thing the mistress of the mansion was able to offer was the personal library that is in this house. The girl demonstrated the so-called library and said she didn't quite know if it would help Kaido in any way. The young scholar was incredibly surprised by the sheer number of shelves with countless books, for he didn't even expect to see such a scale. Kaido immediately asked where he could find magic, medical, and pharmaceutical books. He would also like to read books about plants, monsters, and war stories. Syria explained that magic books are on the second tier, medical books on the right, and pharmaceutical books on the left, and all other books can be found on the fourth tier of shelving. At this, Syria explained that the special books on creature magic were hidden in a secret room, and if Kaido wanted to familiarize himself with them, she could escort him. But the young scholar refused and explained that he had enough material to study for today. The library was indeed huge and was very much to the young scholar's liking. Syria stated that she was glad to see people who valued knowledge and strived for excellence. Syria admitted that if she had the opportunity, she would double the size of the library and add a lower floor. But for the moment, the library collected literature from some neighboring countries. The girl explained that Skazburg was surrounded by 4 strong countries between which there were not the best relations. The king of Hamburgst was killed by a mercenary from Lukaya, and Granbels founded an order of knights that broke away from Elgard, who have since rebuilt their own empire. Syria told how her country had been invaded many times because of its disadvantageous geographical location. But for over 100 years, they still managed to hold off the onslaught of their enemies. Kaido realized that the current situation was not an easy task for a lover of knowledge to obtain rare literature. Syria stated that she was well aware that the leakage of books was tantamount to the leakage of knowledge from the country. Therefore, she collected these books no matter what. In doing so, she had to use both legal and illegal means. It was through these incredible efforts that this amazing library was created. Kaido first found himself in the middle of the books on medicine and began to study them with interest. As he studied, Kaido realized that the biology of the people of this world was not very different, and although it is obvious that the people here do not have a developed level of medicine, and it often turns out that if a person is seriously ill, he is left to himself and hope only for a miracle. The young scientist decided that if he had the right place, perhaps he could create medicines and various medical equipment with magic. In doing so, Kaido noticed a strange flower that was unknown to him. Then the young scientist began to study books about magic and found out that the reproduction of magic is more like a complex puzzle. For example, non-elemental magic was characterized by quick activation and could be used by anyone. The downside of such magic was the very limited possibilities. And unlike other magic, There was also a noticeable difference in the amount of magic power expended. But the consumption of magic power was still less when compared to creation magic. So Kaido decided to memorize some interesting formulas. And maybe gemstones or metals would help him with that. After all, ruby, for example, represents fire. Blue sapphire has been compared to water, and green sapphire to wind. Magic could also be associated with precious metals. Rumia complained that she was already very tired of just sitting around doing nothing, and she was tired of sitting in the stuffy library. Kaido apologized for such a tedious process and explained that he still needed to study books on military history, and he also needed to learn about the flora and fauna, as well as more about the monsters of this world. Rumia decided to sleep and said that she would really like Kaido to handle all the things while she rested. The young scholar was indeed very thirsty for knowledge and studied almost every book he came across. Syria was marveled at the young scholar's incredible flow speed. For such skills she had never seen before. The young scholar explained that he had his own way of reading books and tried to memorize only what he really needed. Syria had never heard such a thing and asked permission to ask a question. The girl inquired as to the 7 herbs that could help with colds. Kaido answered without hesitation that they were crust, Leishiases, Melthios, Habarica Zalst, and Parentes. A decoction of Meltios and Habarica has a calming effect. And if you grind Leishiases together with Lucica and Parentes, you get an excellent sleeping pill that can be used for recuperation. Syria decided to complicate the question and asked where exactly Zarst grows. Kaido answered quite accurately that this medicinal plant grows in wooded areas near rivers, while Ligris grows near lakes, which is located in Gamburst. Therefore, special permission from the Dukes of Lemia, Kleis and Fordist is needed to collect these medicinal herbs. The mistress of the library then asked to name all the necessary conditions for becoming a dragon lord. The brilliant scholar explained that the first thing to do is to enrage the dragon in a one-on-one battle. And while the dragon is in a rage, it is required to render it unconscious. After the dragon awakens, a blade must be hovered over the tip of its nose. And if the dragon will pliantly show his belly, then it means that the taming has been successful. But most importantly, after that it is imperative to feed and house the dragon somewhere. Therefore, because of such difficult conditions, only powerful people with resources and land can become dragon lords. Syria was annoyed by Kaido's incredible ability to memorize any information and literally pounced on him. Syria was genuinely jealous of the young scientist and asked what one even had to do to memorize information so well. Kaido recalled his special reading technique, which greatly helps to reduce time and helps to memorize only important information. Kaido also stated that he had time to compare 2 interesting atlases. The scientist stated that the images of Meltios and Meltilia were confused in those atlases. Syria looked closely at the images and agreed that the books did indeed contain inexcusable errors, and therefore a complaint should be made to the publisher. Kaido then decided to take up the study of military history books. Syria immediately recommended reading Oswald's history books, as they contained a lot of information regarding neighboring countries. Syria also recommended weighty books called Traditional Troops of Lukgaya, Chronicle of the Military March of Gamburst, Military Cannons of Elgard, and Chronicles of the Imperial Troops of Granbles. And the girl also advised that for a better understanding of this world, he should definitely familiarize himself with and read the Book of Threats to the Kingdom of Schutzburg. Kaido thought that Syria had provided so many books to read with some malicious intentions and then wanted to make a test. Syria herself suggested that if there was anything unclear, to contact her and she would explain the details. After an hour, Kaido explained to Syria what letters and figures of speech are not used, and if she wanted to use them in the same way, it would be better to change them slightly. The girl thanked for the hints and praised Kaido for his excellent way of explaining. The young scientist admitted that he didn't even understand why he was the one who started explaining some inconsistencies. Syria admitted that Kaido had only had 1 day to surpass all her knowledge, and so she couldn't help but take the opportunity to learn something new. Kaido pointed out that the girl's way of speaking was too fast, but he himself was satisfied that he had acted, at least not for long, but all the teacher. Syria admitted that she still had a few more questions, but Kaido decided to talk about the deal right away. The young scholar asked Syria to help him avoid trouble in the future, since she had influence and useful knowledge. Syria decided not to refuse the request, but immediately inquired about the benefits to her. The conversation continued in a more relaxed manner, And soon after it was over, Rumiya woke up as well, having missed all the interesting things. Syria and Kaido were just returning from the top floor. The mansion mistress asked Kaido to bring honey yam next time so she could give it to Scarlet to sample and figure out its price. Kaido noticed that the winged girl was already awake and apologized for the long wait. But Rumiya felt hungry after her sleep and asked again if they were really talking about honey yams. Syria, in order to annoy her friend, began to tell again how delicious yams were, and Rumiya began to forcefully demand from the scientist to give her this magnificent root vegetable. After that, Kaido and Rumiya went to Canal City and bought a variety of clothes for everyday life. Kaido asked if they would visit the gun store this time, but the winged girl explained that this store was off today, and so it was better to buy fish and go home. Suddenly, with a loud shout, a girl who apparently knew Rumiya well stood up, rapidly approaching. The stranger immediately began to embrace the winged girl and questioned what kind of man was beside her. Rumiya called the overly noisy girl Silica and asked her to loosen her embrace. Kaido joked that apparently there was some incredible connection between them, and it was most likely the fault of sincere feelings that lead to jealousy. Rumiya barked at the scientist, asking him not to play along with Silica. Silica herself turned out to be a very jealous girl indeed, and was jealous of her friend. Kaido noticed the girl's embittered look and asked her to calm down, because he is the simplest and weakest man, and how can such a beautiful lady like to mock the weak? Silica immediately asked what Kaido had to do with his favorite sister. The young scholar explained that he was merely loafing around her house and living off Rumiya. Then Silica still calmed down a bit and introduced herself as the deputy commander of the first squad of mercenary air fighters, and explained that she was subordinate to her sister. Therefore, she was now on her way to visit Rumiya after recovering. Silica explained that she had completely accidentally noticed the cute couple walking around the city so carefree and didn't immediately realize who she was actually seeing. Kaido tried to explain that Silica was wrong, and although from the outside they looked like a couple in love, it was far from it. So there was no need to jump to conclusions. It was much easier to assume that they were just good friends and were shopping together in the city. But Silica didn't really listen to Kaido's words and asked her sister what she even found in this unassuming guy and in a stupid white coat. Silica was indeed incredibly annoyed and promised the young scientist to never forget his insolence. Rumiya decided to distract everyone from figuring out the relationship and suggested going out to get some fish. But Silica declared that there was no need for that. Silica explained that before going to visit her favorite sister, she had bought fish and meat, and so they could already go home. Rumiya agreed and cradled the young scientist as usual to keep him from falling off during the flight. Silica was immediately indignant and asked why Rumiya was holding Kaido so tightly against her, because it was too provocative. Rumiya explained that the young scholar couldn't use the magic of flight, so she always carried him in her arms. But such an explanation couldn't take away Silica's envy and jealousy. The younger sister declared that she would carry Kaido herself and Rumiya should pick up the groceries, and it would be much fairer. The young scholar asked Silica to hold him as tightly as possible so that he wouldn't accidentally fall down, for it would be very foolish to die that way. As it turned out, Silica bought several kinds of fish, among which were mackerel, Japanese mackerel and Japanese sea pike perch, and some other kinds of fish. Kaido confessed that he couldn't identify all the species of fish since he was seeing most of the varieties for the first time in his life. Rumiya immediately inquired about what exactly Kaido would cook for dinner. The young scientist explained that he was going to make fried fish with salt and a soup similar to yesterday, but with a different broth and vegetables. And if all that wasn't enough, he could also make onigiri. Silica already understood that this was the cuisine of the land of the rising sun, and it was fine since Kaido was able to find the right ingredients in this world as well. Rumiya explained that Kaido had brought some foods along with him and even some beautiful red fruits. Silica saw a real persimmon for the first time in her life and asked if she could try it. But her older sister forbade her to do so and explained that these fruits were very expensive and their quantity was limited. Rumiya realized that Silica would most likely stay with her until the next convocation, and Kaido certainly wouldn't want to reveal the secrets of his magic to a girl he didn't know. In other words, there's a good chance that the scientist won't use creation magic and won't add new products. So now it's necessary to prioritize properly, and if Silica is allowed to eat persimmons, there won't be enough for everyone. but Silica started to beg pitifully for just a taste of a fruit unknown to her. Rumiya decided to be strict and ordered her sister to stop thinking about it altogether, although it was clear from Silica's look that this was unlikely to happen. Suddenly, Kaido announced that he still had some fruit left in his room and so could allow Silica to eat the persimmons. The young scientist hurried to his room and promised to return soon with food that definitely no one had tasted before. Kaido decided to create as many foods as possible just in case, since it was often not convenient to do so now. While Kaido was in his room, Silica had already managed to taste persimmons and admitted that she had never eaten anything tastier. The scientist noticed how the girl had gotten better and was satisfied with the result. Then Kaido, as promised, finally offered Rumiya a taste of the newly created honey yam. Rumiya carefully peeled the fruit and savored its incredibly sweet flavor. The winged girl declared that it was completely different from a potato, and such a honey yam could be sold as a high-class dessert. It would be enough to give it a more attractive shape, and you could make money from it. Silica immediately wanted to try the incredible root vegetable too, but Rumiya warned her younger sister to only take a small bite. Silica was delighted with the honey yam and confessed that she couldn't even figure out which tasted better, the exquisite sweet flavor of persimmon or the rich taste of yam. Silica asked if Kaido could sell such wonderful products to her as well, but Rumiya said that it was unlikely that Silica would be able to afford it, because Syria buys such fruits and vegetables for 150,000 apiece. Silica realized that such a delicious treat must really cost a lot, and she with her mercenary salary would never raise the necessary amount. Silica sadly said that would she really have to agree to something ungenerous to earn more. Kaido suggested looking for other ways, such as opening her own shop and engaging in trading. Silica immediately decided to catch pity and asked her older sister if Rumiya would not show her an ounce of compassion and help her get tasty products. But Rumiya replied that it was none of her business and Silica was old enough to deal with her problems on her own. Silica instantly turned into a resentful child and began to cry and then accused her older sister of indifference. Kaido decided to calm the girl down and promised that as long as he lived in the house, he would not charge Silica for his groceries, and glad she asked so. Then concessions should be made for her. Rumiya also agreed, and the younger sister started hugging the winged girl with joy. Rumiya asked not to hug her so much, and not to pull down her clothes because it was indecent. Kaido decided that the relationship between the girls is really beautiful, because even though Silica is somewhat rude, she loves her older sister very much. After the touching scene, the young scholar decided that it was time to get down to cooking dinner already. The first thing Kaido did was rinse the rice thoroughly, and then cut the fish and sprinkled it lightly with salt. While the young scientist chopped up the ingredients for the soup, the girls did strength training. Soon dinner was prepared and Kaido inquired if Rumiya was alright. The winged girl admitted that she hadn't calculated her strength well, and now her body was a little sore. Silica, on the other hand, immediately appreciated the wonderful aroma of the freshly cooked food and was ready to try a dish unknown to her. Kaido offered to eat while the food was hot and explained that these dishes were staples of Japanese cuisine, which was why they were so popular in his homeland. Silica enjoyed every bite and asked if soy sauce could be added to meat, not just fish, and how it would affect the flavor. Kaido explained that this versatile sauce goes with almost any food. The scientist then turned his attention to Rumiya's distressed look. Rumiya asked Kaido to provide 2 mangoes for dessert. The scientist noticed the fearful tone in the girl's voice and promised to bring the fruit in a few minutes. Soon, Kaido brought the promised mangoes and placed a plate on the table. As it turned out, there was only one plate, and it was only for the lady of the house. This made Silica visibly upset and couldn't understand that she wouldn't get dessert. Her younger sister asked if there was a mango for her too, but Rumiya replied that not this time, and there was no need to be impudent. Rumiya suggested her younger sister to watch her eating the fruit with pleasure. Silica declared something like that was too cruel, even for trivial revenge. But Rumiya really enjoyed her superiority and confessed that she didn't care at all what Silica was talking about. The younger sister decided to take a different path and asked Kaido to treat her to a mango. In doing so, Silica promised to be sure to pay later. Rumiya immediately warned the young scholar of the consequences if he agreed to Silica's entreaties. Kaido decided not to take any chances and refused his younger sister's help. But then Rumiya decided to show her superiority and arrogantly allowed him to treat his younger sister to a small piece of mango. Kaido asked that why didn't Rumina share it herself, but the winged girl refused. Silica felt the real pleasure of the piece of mango and confessed that she had never felt such a rich, sweet yet fresh taste before. The younger sister asked for some more mango, but the older sister flatly forbade it and pushed Silica aside. Silica started sobbing out of resentment and accused her elder sister of having a real demon inside her, which makes her very cruel. But Rumia only enjoyed her superiority and replied that it was Silica's own fault and she shouldn't have tried the mango in the first place. Kaido realized that it was better for him to stay out of the two girls' squabbles because he still didn't fully understand their feud. Silica asked her older sister to explain why she was being so cruel to her. But Rumia immediately recalled how Silica ran away from home without permission and made her worry. Kaido was surprised when he heard about the young girl's escape. Without stopping to cry, Silica resentfully stated that she had long been disenfranchised from anything, and therefore it was not actually considered running away from home. Silica explained that she had been through a lot in the past, and then one day she met Rumia and called her her big sister. After that momentous meeting, she found herself in a mercenary unit. Silica resentfully stated that it would have been better if they had never met Rumia since she now had to endure such insults. But then Silica did recognize the fact that Rumia can be caring, and that's why she didn't leave her in that difficult situation. And in fact, Rumia is sometimes willing to care even for kittens abandoned on the street. Kaido admitted that he would also help if he was in a similar situation, although it might be more interesting to watch such futile attempts to resist from the outside. After saying that, the young scholar felt a kick from behind and went into the dream world. Silica was frightened for the young scientist's condition, but Rumia said that there was no need to worry because Kaido had tremendous magical power, and such a knockout wouldn't cause any harm other than a slight headache. Soon, Kaido actually woke up and asked not to make him look like an idiot anymore. Rumia exclaimed that she was right, and there was nothing wrong with the scientist. Silica asked that if Kaido really had that much magical power. Rumia explained that the scholar's capabilities exceeded the wildest assumptions. Rumia admitted that her power was about 4 times less than Kaido's, and the scientist could blow away her entire squad with just one magical cannon shot. Kaido had no idea what she was talking about and asked what kind of magic cannon Rumia was talking about. The winged girl explained that it was the ability of a person to create a magical shot of varying power. Silica stated that even if the scientist decided to give her rare foods, it would have no effect on the amount of his magic power. Rumia explained that depending on the consumption of magic power, the total power would also increase. Normally, high-end magic consumed more than 700,000 units of magic power. Kaido asked that could he really use high-class magic 11 times. Silica enviously said that such a talent is the real reward and the whole world is unfair to her. Rumina wondered how useful a fighter like Kaido could be if he was placed in the rear. Silica exclaimed that in that case, the team's chances of survival increases many times over. The young scholar was indignant because the girls were trying to decide for him and didn't even ask his opinion if he even wanted to participate in something like this. But Rumia explained that girls always have their own secrets. Kaido grudgingly replied who could ever agree to something they didn't know. Rumia stated that although the young scholar is very smart, but he is completely ignorant of all the intricacies of human relationships. Silica stated that Kaido should just accept her older sister's terms, because arguing with her was a hopeless endeavor. Rumia grabbed Kaido, and the boy was indignant that he would be tortured to get her to agree. The rest of the evening, the winged girl persuaded hard, and still to some extent inclined to consent genius scientist, because it is very difficult to resist the persistence of a beautiful girl. In the morning, Silica immediately inquired if Kaido was well saved. The guy admitted that just a little more, and he would have had to go to eternal rest, because Rumia was too insatiable in her desires. Silica explained that he just shouldn't have resisted, and then Rumia would have been much more gentle, for she was perfectly capable of being very olfactory and affectionate. In fact, Silica was of course jealous at her older sister, for she had to spend the night alone. Then the younger sister declared that it was time for her to head out for her morning training. The girl suggested Kaido to go along with her, for it was obvious that fighting was not his strongest side. Therefore, remaining as a frail weakling would be completely unreasonable. The young scholar agreed and admitted that he really should be working hard on developing his body in the current situation. After going to the spacious clearing, Silica suggested a light fist fight to begin with and promised the scholar to restrain his strength and not to strike hard. But at the same time, the cunning Silica warned that in any business there are accidents, and if something happens, you should not take offense at her. Silica, without any preparation, immediately attacked the young scientist and was able to deliver the heaviest blow to his stomach. Silica was advised to never relax during a fight and prepared for another attack. This time, the young adventuress prepared to fire her bow. Kaido was able to react in time, and the arrow very nearly hit her right leg. The genius scientist realized that Silica was purposely aiming at non-lethal points such as hands and feet. Dodging arrows, Kaido did not notice how he was on the edge of the cliff and stopped feeling the ground under his feet. But thanks to his incredible reaction, Kaido still managed to stay on the edge of the cliff and decided to get the brazen adventurer. Silica praised her opponent for his perseverance, but also stated that Kaido was unlikely to be able to avoid being attacked by several arrows at once. Silica stated that if she held back her strength during the battle, it might hurt Kaido's pride. But the young scholar angrily replied that those were just the excuses of a person looking for an excuse. The young adventuress accepted the challenge and shouted that she would now fight seriously. Silica warned her opponent that she was going to use her secret technique of raining arrows. With just one shot, Silica was able to unleash a dozen arrows that rained down lightning fast towards the scholar. But Kaido decided to test the cunning, and with a swift dash, he approached the adventurer, thus avoiding the kill zone. Kaido shouted happily that he was now in the safest place possible, for Silica would not fire over his head. Then, for even more safety, the genius scientist grabbed the girl and lifted the young body above his head using Silica as an additional defense. The young adventuress was outraged by such an act. Silica accused Kaido of being really mean. After all, how could he dare to use her as a shield? And anyway, who would take cover with such a beautiful girl? Kaido found an excuse in the fact that their whole mating duel had turned into a real battle, and it was unfair to attack him from a long distance with arrows. Rumiya watched her friends and thought they were acting like resentful children. Rumiya still intervened in the duel and ordered it to stop immediately. The winged girl reminded the scientist that he could just use reinforcement magic. But Kaido was furious and shouted that he still had a lot to say to Silica. At that, Rumiya remarked that Kaido's thinking speed during the battle was really astounding, and it was excellent progress. Then the young scholar did calm down and reminded Rumiya that he needed to deliver the goods to Sierra. Silica didn't want to be alone and stated that she wanted to go with everyone, and then she could stop by the weapons store since she needed to replenish her arrows. The girls then suggested that they have a good breakfast before traveling. All that remained was to figure out what exactly to cook. Silica suggested cooking fried fish with rice, and Kaido reminded her that there was still food left over from yesterday, and in addition to that, they could quickly think of appetizers. Silica kept insisting on fried fish and crumbly rice, and it was hard to argue with her. Rumiya was glad that Kaido and Silica had already made up, and were surprisingly not getting along badly. After breakfast as planned, the friends arrived at Shiria's mansion. As usual, the hostess welcomed the guests into the spacious room and ordered tea to be served. Sierra was only surprised that Silica had joined the visitors this time. Sierra assumed that Silica was staying at Rumiya's house as usual. The young adventuress declared that she would be by her older sister's side until the next order. The young scholar then suggested that all the girls and Chef Scarlet try the new fruit and set a fair price. All three girls were excited about the new taste sensation and struggled to find words to express their emotions. Scarlet stated that persimmons were undeniably delicious, but this fruit is different. It was as if it was designed to be a festive offering to a rich table. The chef without hesitation set the price at a minimum of 25,000 apiece, and Kaido decided to move on to the next product. Sierra ended up offering 1,000 for the dried persimmon, 1,000 for the honey yam as well, and 30,000 for the soy sauce and 32,000 runes for everything together. Kaido slightly thought about the price, and Sierra asked what about the matter they had talked about the last time they met. The young scientist stated that if they were done here, they could move on and then start thinking about plans. Silica tried to understand what important matters would be discussed, but it was hard for her to get into the problems of her older friends. Thus passed 1 hour. After Siria's mansion, the friends went to the gear store, where they were happily greeted by the owner, Mr. Gorin. Rumiya immediately inquired about anything interesting, but Mr. Gorin said that there was very little merchandise available at the moment, as people had shown up and were quickly buying up all the valuable items. Rumiya asked if this was something that any of the countries were doing. Rumiya knew very well that Gamburst had some elite warriors and good artisans at his disposal. Granbull's, on the other hand, relies on the number of warriors rather than their quality, and it was unlikely that the two countries would be engaged in buying high-end goods. Mr. Gorin suggests that Lutgaya or Elgard are most likely involved, and perhaps some future rebellion is being prepared. Eventually, the shopkeeper asked if the girls would like to buy some excellent throwing knives. But Rumiya was not interested in such goods, and Silica ordered 1,000 arrows for herself as usual. Kaido refused to examine the weapons at all, and said that he had only come for company. The young scholar was surprised at the appearance of the weapon store, for there was complete order everywhere and not a single speck of dust anywhere. Mr. Gorin gave the impression of a perfect perfectionist. Mr. Gorin explained that he had a lot of free time and just liked order. Kaido replied that one could always relax and do nothing, but the shopkeeper stated that he was not one of those people who wasted time. Suddenly, the door of the store opened and a noisy group of adventurers piled into the room. The young scientist immediately recognized the guys he had encountered in the market square and fought with. The head of the adventurers' squad demanded that the shopkeeper give him a smaller blade, since his size wasn't really suitable for close combat. Kaido and Rumiya immediately joked that apparently the guy has an inner disposition towards small sizes. The evil adventurer of course reacted to the joke and tried to immediately attack the Joker, but was immediately hit in the face with a spray can. The tear gas did not please the rude adventurer at all, and they screamed in pain and annoyance. Kaido supplemented the adventurers' painful feelings with generous kicks and ordered them not to yell in the store. The scientist decided to teach the cheeky boys a lesson and promised to teach them a lesson in good etiquette. Silica asked what kind of ability Kaido had used against the adventurers. Rumiya, of course, didn't know about the existence of such canisters, so she assumed that it was some kind of specific poison. Kaido eventually finished his educational measures and returned to the girls, and the adventurers began to apologize for their rudeness and promised to make amends. Mr. Gorin was impressed by this change in the behavior of the rude adventurers and said that he was not at all offended by them. But the team leader insisted he was at fault and sincerely wanted to do something useful. The adventurers said that as compensation for their behavior, they were willing to work for nothing and Mr. Gorin could order anything he wanted. The shopkeeper decided to take advantage of this opportunity and offered the boys to do some cleaning. The adventurers gladly accepted the job and started washing and sweeping the floors. Not even a trace of their aggression and rudeness remained. Rumiya demanded an explanation from Kaido because these rude people had become completely different people. The young scientist explained that he just brainwashed the guys with a special hypnosis and do not worry about their condition, because tomorrow the effect will weaken significantly. The winged girl was horrified by such abilities of Kaido and asked if he had brainwashed her too. But the genius scientist explained that he does not do that to his friends, and in general, during hypnosis, all memories are preserved and decided to demonstrate it. Kaido made the main adventurer hit the floor on purpose and smashed his forehead. The demonstration of the power of suggestion went properly and the rest of the guys continued to clean up the store. Rumiya sent the scientist into unconsciousness again and still decided to buy some new daggers so that she wouldn't leave the store without shopping. Mr. Gorin praised the excellent choice and wrapped up the purchased goods. Silica decided that Kaido was actually a real monster, and most likely at the morning training session, he would have easily been able to defeat her. And now it's not clear whether he's really an evil person or more of a good person. Silica thought that now it was an added hassle to have to carry the scholar in your arms. Meanwhile, Rumiya paid the merchant 60,000 and Mr. Gorin joked that it looked like a robbery. Silica suggested that they should hurry back home, but Rumiya asked her younger sister to wait here for a while. Just then, Kruger walked into the store and greeted his friends. Rumiya asked if Kruger had decided to buy himself something new. The huge adventurer complained that the fire lizard had melted his shield, and so he needed to buy a new one. Kruger also noticed unfamiliar guys doing a thorough cleaning of the store and asked who they were. Rumiya explained that it was completely unimportant and too long a story not to tell. Kruger didn't insist and asked if Rumiya felt like she was being followed lately. The winged girl replied that apparently it didn't seem that way to her, as she had such suspicions as well. Kruger explained that it was probably the guys from the regular troops or something like that doing it. Silica was surprised and asked why anyone would be following them at all since they had nothing of value. Kruger advised not to worry, because if they are regular resellers, they will be doing the usual surveillance, and would probably only attack in a deserted place. On the way back, the girls were more careful, but did not notice any following. Assistant Hannah asked permission to enter Syria's office, and it was noticeable how the girl was very worried. Syria inquired where Sharon was at the moment since she should have given a report long ago. Hannah explained that after Sharon had returned home, she had fainted immediately, and when she regained consciousness, she had started banging her head against the wall. Syria was surprised and could not understand what had happened to her assistant. Meanwhile, in the woods near Canal City, a small camp had set up. The warriors had carefully prepared their equipment, and all they had to do was to charge the stones with magic power. The captain ordered them to be on guard at all times, and advised them to prepare carefully so that they could act quickly and decisively at the right moment. The subordinate asked if the captain was sure of his decision. The enchantress reminded the captain that the black-winged witch Rumia had killed her giant eagle, and so this was not a good time to attack. The enchantress then whispered important information in the captain's ear, for she was afraid that even in this forest someone might hear them. After that, the captain ordered to act at the most opportune moment and rub opportunities, for their mission is the most important. The captain declared that he was obliged to avenge Rumia for the lost eye and arm, and this retribution should be very cruel. Syria was in her library charging magic stones, and as soon as she finished, she decided to hide the stones and go about her business. After hiding the magic stones in a special hidden pocket, Syria headed to the living room where Kaido, Rumia, and Cyril were waiting for her. Syria apologized for her thoughtfulness and explained that she had a lot of important things to do lately. Kaido suggested that in that case, he should leave the mansion as soon as possible so as not to distract his mistress. But Syria declared that there was no inconvenience for her and offered to discuss payment for the goods. After the whole company discussed the price and the new food deliveries to Syria's mansion, they went to the Little Happiness restaurant. Cyril said that it was very rare to see Mrs. Syria so distracted. Rumia suggested that it was likely that Syria was busy because of the incident of buying rare weapons. That being said, Laura was currently in Garnabrest. Kaido asked who exactly Laura was. Rumia explained, it's Syria's main guard and her best servant. Laura is also capable of doing office work and handling important negotiations. Laura usually gives the impression of an incredible beauty, but at the same time, she has tremendous fighting power. The young scientist confessed that he absolutely does not want to date such a girl. Rumia calmed the scientist down and explained that the rage he was having with Syria herself. Then he would see if he could meet Laura. Especially Laura herself was not here right now and would only be back in a few days. Cyril joked that she thought Kaido was as good as Laura in terms of nastiness of character, and they could be perfect for each other, although it's likely that if they ever meet, they'll have a confrontation if the circumstances are right. But in a worst-case scenario, they might get along. Cyril continued to joke and said that it would be a good idea to eliminate someone from the pair beforehand before they caused damage. Rumia actually cheered up and asked the hostess of the establishment to bring them the bill. Rumia decided to take care of Cyril's upbringing, and Kaido offered everyone some delicious ice cream for dessert. Cyril declared that it was a very pathetic attempt to divert her attention with a sweet dessert. The girl promised that in any case, she was not going to yield Kaido to any rival. Soon the whole company found themselves outside a store with a wonderful ice cream. The friendly saleswoman asked what kind of ice cream the guests wanted. Kaido, like a true scientist, took a final look at the freezing mechanism used in this store and decided that there was a lot of work to be done in terms of design. Cyril, meanwhile, had already had time to look over the entire assortment and asked the scientist what kind of ice cream he wanted. Soon the friendly saleswoman served the guests cool cups of chocolate, milk, and rum ice cream. 3 servings of sumptuous ice cream cost only 150,000 runes. Kaido, like a true gentleman, paid for the girls, and Rumia thanked him for such a noble deed. Cyril admitted with a satisfied look that the ice cream tasted great, and it was especially delicious when the ice cream was free. The girl again decided to show wonders of courtesy and offered the scientist a taste of her ice cream with a spoon. Cyril declared that her ice cream was delicious and worth trying. Kaido decided to try the unusual kind of ice cream and was surprised at how rich and really tasty it was. Rumiya also asked to try a variety of ice cream, but Cyril only offered what she had already experienced. The winged girl of course refused such a thing. Cyril explained that it was just a joke and immediately treated her big sister to some ice cream. Rumiya in return also gave Cyril a taste of her chocolate ice cream. After a few minutes, it became clear that all the ice cream in this store was mixed with a small amount of alcohol, and the combination of rum and raisins in the different ice creams gives a wonderful flavor. Kaido offered Cyril to take as much ice cream as she wanted. But as it turned out, Rumiya was ahead of her younger sister and was the first to grab a cup of the cool dessert. Cyril was indignant at her older sister's behavior and reminded her of the harmful effects of sweets on her figure. Kaido, seeing the two girls starting to argue again, asked them to be sensible and not make scandals in a public place. Rumiya was pleased with her visit to the ice cream restaurant and promised to pay the entire bill for the dessert next time. Cyril and Rumiya didn't fight anymore and enjoyed the ice cream, and Kaido was satisfied that he was able to please two girls even though he had spent money. Shortly after visiting the ice cream restaurant, the whole group returned home and decided to have lunch. Cyril asked if Kaido had done all the repairs in the house, because everything looked quite professional, not worse than some craftsmen would have done. Rumiya told how she had found Kaido at the right moment, when she was struggling to think of a new interior, and it turned out that Kaido did even better than many experts. Cyril immediately inquired how exactly her older sister had met such a wonderful man. Kaido explained that one day he was walking across the plain and Rumiya happened to call out to him. That was how their first meeting happened. After that, Rumiya used a kick of her foot to knock him to the ground, and he lost consciousness. And then Rumiya carried him to her house, and after that they started living together. Cyril was shocked by the story and immediately accused her elder sister of kidnapping, but Rumiya said that she was just misunderstood. Cyril then asked that if Kaido was so smart that he could fool everyone. The young scientist didn't know the right way to say it and stated that everyone had their own secrets. Cyril was indignant and asked that would her beloved older sister prefer the company of such a cunning and rotten man. But Kaido replied that she would not tolerate being accused by a monster who chose to kill an absolute beginner with arrows. Cyril accused Kaido of deception and hiding his real abilities, and then lashed out at the scientist. Rumiya watched the scuffle with interest and decided that the two were very similar in personality after all, since they were always trying to solve the problem with their fists. After dinner, Kaido went straight to his room and tried to fall asleep as soon as possible. But an unexpected creak brought the young man's consciousness back from the dream world. Cyril climbed onto the bed with quick movements and threatened the scientist with a knife. Kaido completely misunderstood the young girl's act and joked that with her watermelon size, she didn't need a bra at all. The girl did not appreciate the joke and with all her might stationed her fist on the scientist's face. Cyril promised to definitely stab Kaido if he once again let him say something derogatory to her. The young scientist promised to behave himself and explained that he still had a lot of things to do in this world. Cyril also advised to keep her older sister out of these matters, even if something unpleasant happens. Kaido explained that his personal safety was only his concern and he wasn't going to involve anyone. Cyril calmed down a bit and hid the dagger in its sheath and asked permission to ask a few questions. The young adventuress wondered why Kaido showed no interest in her and only tried to offend her sometimes. Kaido was unprepared for such a frank conversation. Cyril, on the other hand, said that she had a lot of fun with her big sister, and now Kaido was in the house, and it changed a lot of things. Cyril admitted that she was very interested in talking to Kaido, and so it wouldn't be a bad thing to get his opinion. The girl reminded that the scientist is very secretive and never talk about feelings. Kaido stated that there was nothing interesting and even less fun in his story. The young scientist confessed that he cannot forget his late wife, for she was a wonderful and kind person and she is greatly missed. Kaido revealed that it's been 2 years since he lost the girl he loved, but that heartbreak still lingers. Cyril apologized for making Kaido remember the sad events, because she didn't even expect such a thing. Kaido wondered why Cyril was dressed so strangely in the first place, but the girl advised her not to make any noise, for then her older sister would be able to hear them. Cyril explained that her clothes were to impress, and that was why she dressed like that. In parting, Kaido asked Cyril not to think about the sad story he told. so one could act as usual and not think about it. Cyril promised to visit the scientist one more time and talk privately. The young adventuress leaving Kaido's room immediately noticed her older sister and was embarrassed, for she honestly thought that she had done everything discreetly. Rumiya said that since Cyril was so dejected, she would not punish her for such an act. Cyril immediately realized that Rumiya knew everything. Rumiya advised her younger sister to repent and not to deceive anyone else. But Cyril asked why Rumiya herself was eavesdropping outside the door, for that was not nice either. The winged girl explained that she was purposely controlling the situation to prevent any bad situations. Cyril didn't believe it and called it the silliest excuse. Rumiya went to the scientist's room and apologized for her stupid eavesdropping. But Kaido replied that he understood perfectly well and was not offended, for female curiosity could be a very strong factor. Kaido explained that he immediately guessed how Rumiya had muffled Cyril's footsteps using wind magic, and since Rumiya had come to this room, that was the most important confirmation that she was eavesdropping. Rumiya admitted that that was exactly what happened and called Kaido a real brute. The scholar then stated that he would gladly accept Rumiya's embrace as a change, but the girl responded with a strong punch. The blow to the solar plexus was very unpleasant, and it took a few minutes for Kaido to come to his senses. Rumiya asked what exactly Kaido was doing, whether he was tricking her or still having fun. The young scholar replied that it was usually 50-50. Kaido apologized and admitted that he was entertained by everyone in his own way and by Syria and Cyril, well, and of course by Rumiya. Rumiya thanked him for his candor and advised him to contact her if Kaido had any concerns. The winged girl then apologized for the intrusion and wished Kaido a good night. As he fell asleep, the young scientist remembered his dead wife. Then Kaido realized that ever since he was in this world, he was constantly surrounded by only beauties, and thus it was very difficult to resist the constant temptation. Kaido regretted that his wife couldn't be by his side and decided that he was bound to get attached to someone after a while after all. Since the morning, Kaido had headed to Canal City with two beautiful girls. There were no particular goals, and everyone just wanted to get away from the uneasy atmosphere for a bit. The young scientist suggested a tour of the market stalls, but Cyril admitted that she wasn't hungry yet. But then Cyril spotted some gorgeous hair jewelry and wanted to take a better look at the merchandise. Rumiya also decided to find something suitable for herself, but she didn't like the rabbit jewelry. Kaido suggested trying on a pendant with a fire motif. Rumiya was interested in a beautiful thing and decided to try on a beautiful pendant. Cyril appreciated the beautiful choice and reminded her ugly sister that she didn't have enough jewelry and needed to buy something. Rumiya remembered that indeed, when she had to attend formal events, she always had to borrow jewelry from acquaintances. So you need to spend a little money and buy yourself a nice thing. The winged girl inquired about the price of the pendant. The seller voiced the price of 90,000, and this caused the girl to be perplexed. The seller explained that the pendant contained a real ruby and was created by the hands of the finest craftsmen. Rumiya confessed that she really wanted to buy this jewelry, and Cyril advised her not to deny herself. Cyril then suggested that the young scholar take responsibility for this purchase, for it was he who had advised her to buy this pendant. Kaido tried to refuse, but the girls reminded him how they had quarreled over it, and therefore Kaido should make the gift. Kaido decided that there was no point in arguing and started counting the money in the wallet that Rumiya had just given him. Kaido stated that he was ready to give a gift, and Cyril immediately reminded him and already showed him the hair clip he had chosen for himself. Kaido tried to object. After all, they had not agreed on that. But Cyril complained that she didn't have any jewelry and one shouldn't separate sisters with gifts. The total amount was 120,000, but the seller, seeing Kaido's distress, reduced the price to 100,000 and saved the young scientist's budget a little. The girls were happy with the gifts and thanked Kaido for his generosity, because it is a sign of a real man. Kaido himself was not particularly happy, for he had not expected such expenses at all. Then Cyril called her older sister to look at the clothes, and Kaido was left alone and decided to wait for the girls outside. Left alone, the young scholar noticed a flower vendor who had an incredible assortment. The vendor noticed the young boy and asked if Kaido had any special requests. The young scholar was interested in a flower called Jeonschlei. This rare flower grows only in the Gulux Mountains. Kaido explained to the merchant that he had seen this flower in a book, but it was even more beautiful in person. The vendor explained that the flower had been picked only yesterday and it would retain its beauty for another day. Kaido asked when the next time there would be fresh flowers. The old man promised to bring a new supply in 4 days and asked if that would suit the young master. But Kaido replied, in 3 days, the anniversary of his beloved wife's death. The old man understood and praised Kaido for true loyalty, for it is a great rarity. The scholar confessed that he could not forget his wife and was unlikely to ever forget. The salesman promised to help and invited Kaido to come to him in 3 days. Kaido thanked the salesman for his understanding and promised to return in 3 days. But suddenly some excited guy came running to the old flower vendor and reported problems related to his grandson. The messenger explained that the grandson had important information related to flowers and needed to meet him. The old man hurriedly ran away and said goodbye to Kaido. The excited old man quickly sped off into the distance, while his assistant dragged the cart behind him. Just at that moment, the adventurer Kruger approached the young scientist and greeted him. Kaido was surprised to see the frail cook Scarlet together with the huge adventurer. It was unclear what these two people had in common at all, as they seemed completely different. Kaido assumed that Scarlet had gone to the market to buy groceries, and it turned out to be true. Scarlet explained that she needed to buy blanks for the kitchen and run a small errand. Kruger explained that he and Scarlet had been friends since childhood and were always happy to socialize when they had free time. But Scarlet reminded the adventurer with a sharp poke that they were engaged, and this caused Kaido to look surprised. Kaido advised the young couple to feel freer and hold hands while walking, for it is much more pleasant. But the huge adventurer complained that Scarlet had broken some of his fingers for fun, and now he was a little scared. Kaido confessed that he was a little jealous, because there really are sincere feelings between them that not everyone can feel. Scarlet bragged that today was her day off, and she could go all day without going back to the kitchen. Scarlet also said that the sous chef was currently running the kitchen, and it would be interesting to know Miss Syria's impression. Kaido praised Scarlet for a great idea, combining her day off and giving the sous chef a chance to prove herself. Kruger asked what exactly Kaido had done with the trio of adventurers who were cleaning the armorer's store. Kruger explained that now those rough guys stopped being idiots and started volunteering. All 3 adventurers help people with all sorts of things for free and even look after small children. Kaido admitted that he didn't even expect such a result. But if it was good for everyone, he's happy for those guys. After all, in any case, it would be better for them to do good deeds themselves than to spoil people's moods. Apparently the brainwashing had some flaws, and that's why it was able to achieve such a result. Kruger asked what would happen if the person started to resist the brainwashing. Scarlet also asked how in general a person under hypnosis could not remember what they were doing. Kaido explained that in some cases, if the person tries to resist or the process goes wrong, the person will bang their head against the wall and their character will change. Scarlet didn't want to waste any more time with strange talk and reminded her fiancé that it was time for them to move on. Kaido said goodbye to the newlyweds and rejoiced for their happiness. Meanwhile, Kaido was being watched by the sorceress and the captain. They waited for a convenient moment and tried not to miss the return of Rumia and Cyril. The enchantress said that the risk was huge, but they should act and try to kidnap the man in the white robe. And in this, they will be helped by the retainers. Meanwhile, Cyril and Rumia were walking down one of the alleys of the city and discussing the recent events. Rumia asked how Cyril could act so calm after last night. The young adventuress explained that it was easier for her to behave as usual, because then no one would pay attention to anything. Cyril then inquired about what exactly Kaido liked from food, but Rumia reminded her of the scientist's secrecy, and so it's hard to know for sure. Rumia noticed a group of strange guys appearing behind her and remembered Kruger's warnings. The winged girl asked if so many guys had a thing for her, and then suggested that they try their hand. Rumia noticed that the opponents were wearing pretty good equipment and asked that didn't the guys have other ways to make money than robbing girls on the streets of the city. The robbers were not talkative and immediately rushed to the attack waving their swords. Rumia dodged without much difficulty and quickly took a more favorable position. Cyril also prepared for battle, and despite her modest size, she was not afraid of her opponents. Rumia said that if these guys bear their weapons, then they are tired of living. The winged girl's swift attack came as a surprise to the bandits, and several guys went to rest on the ground. Rumia's strongest blows caused the brigands to suffer terribly, and many received fractures. The amazing speed left no chance for the guys to defend themselves from the blows, and this only added to Rumia's fury. Cyril was not inferior to her older sister and easily knocked out the big bandits. The young adventurer's frail body didn't seem to inspire danger, but in fact, it had incredible strength and had been trained in numerous battles. Cyril stated that judging from the movements of her opponents, they were most likely soldiers of Elgard's regular army, or perhaps former soldiers who now work as mercenaries. Suddenly, Rumia understood the meaning of this attack and stated that it was just a diversion and they were deliberately delayed in this alley. Therefore, they need to find Kaido as soon as possible because he is the main target of the attack. Just at this moment, Kaido was quietly waiting for the girls sitting on a bench and noticed a strange stranger approaching him. Not expecting anything bad, Kaido politely asked how he could help the strange girl. The enchantress stared intently into the scholar's eyes and ordered him to follow her. The girl relied completely on her suggestion magic, which had helped her accomplish tasks many times. Kaido obediently got up from the bench and followed the stranger, and the sorceress quickly searched the guy's pockets and took away a small knife just in case. The sorceress was pleased with the perfectly executed plan, and trying not to attract unnecessary attention, Slow Gate led Kaido away from the central square.